What's going on, everybody? My name is John Paz, and welcome to episode 24 of Destination Talk.
And I am Harry, and we are coming to you again from Chop Studios, located at 750 Route 34 in Matawan, New Jersey. And a big shout out and a thank you to our show sponsor, The Academy in Garwood. To schedule your free class, you can reach them at 908-540-6936. Today, we are joined by former collegiate wrestler and current mindset training coach, Nicholas Coco. We will dive into his background, his college career, and what it was that he saw was lacking in athletes when it came to physical and mental training, whether struggling with confidence, the pressure to perform, NIL, and social media influences. You are going to want to be locked in on this episode. Coach, we thank you for taking the time out of your day to be a part of the show. How are you doing?
Doing well, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well,
and,
we
very
appreciate
excited.
it too. So, can you give, for those who might not know anything about you, can you give us a little bit about your background? Where you went to school, your sports that you were involved in, and then kind of how you got on the path you're on today.
Yeah, definitely. Just like a lot of kids around my age group, 30 and up, a lot of manhunt, a lot of tag, a lot of informal activities in the street. Not as much as, say, the senior generation with stickball and things like that, but pretty informal early on. Grew up playing Pop Warner football. Didn't really get into the wrestling until later. Really, it was my brother who was the catalyst for that. He kind of saw that as a great opportunity for me to utilize it as a tool for college, where some of the other combat sports, not so much, say, boxing or even the early infancy of MMA.
Right.
So it was a little different. Obviously, you guys kind of alluded to the NIL and all that. That it's a different space now. It's a different place. But yeah, we pretty much played everything growing up. Pretty informal. Obviously part of like rec leagues. It's a little different in New York compared to Jersey, but
Right.
Getting involved in more of the rec stuff and just pretty just multi-sport, something I'm a big advocate for. I think that's a big challenge now we can get into the early and over specialization of youth athletes. That's kind of like what I wrote my thesis on and everything, but not to get too ahead. Fast forward a little bit, really fall in love with the wrestling. Wrestling comes pretty easy to me. Ninth grade, hitting the varsity mats. By the time I'm a senior, I wrestled at Eastchester High School. It's in Section 1, just north of the city. Made it all county, all league, all section. Pretty good, but not great. Fast forward, kind of wrestling better in these off-season tournaments. Back then, early days, pop and flow duels, early day war at the shore. Before we have our NHSCAs, before we have our Super 32s on the level it's at, right? So it's kind of sucks because I was kind of in that middle, in between age group where, wrestling was not what it is now, but definitely starting to see clubs and things like that on its horizon, I think. And just always trying to like learn and get better and look ahead and find new ways to do anything, how to improve. But at that point, I definitely had a decent accolade. So I was looking at a few schools, Brockport, JWU, some of the other D3s. Really wanted to get into coaching and teaching from the jump. Knew that early on, had some really good mentors, some good coaches in my life. Definitely wouldn't be where I'm at without them. And, you think you're a kid, you're kind of like kid, like 17, you're like, yeah, I want to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be like those guys because, they had this changed me and impacted me so much. And so I kind of followed those footsteps, so to speak. Ended up at Brockport, got my grad degree up there at Canisius, spent some time coaching at the high school and collegiate levels. So pretty familiar with the challenges the grassroots face. Definitely even the youth level, as you guys know, kind of go into these local small tournaments and things like that. And kind of ended up where I'm at because I always thought to myself, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a different way to do things. We can't just keep like the same old. You do the same things, you get the same results. So I was always kind of like self-experimenting with myself, my own periodization, my own training, things like that. Because again, we didn't have there was no TikTok, so there's no like instant reel of videos.
Right.
And it's like, maybe you have Zach Evanesh throwing a sandbag down in Edison and let me go try that in my backyard, So that's kind of some of my background, kind of how I got to where I'm at now. And I'm here. I'm happy. I hope that gives some background. of
No,
me.
it
And
certainly does. But I got to add, because I was born and raised in Brooklyn, Coach, and I was there for the first 17 years of my life, and I did play stickball. So I guess
sure you did.
I fall into that senior class, I guess, apparently. But I relate very much to what you said, because we'd go into the schoolyard, we would create games, we would do whatever, like this type of training that I do with my athletes at my facility, and the things I see you doing, that didn't exist. Our speed schools consisted of schoolyards in the street and in playgrounds, and that's not what we're seeing today.
Absolutely. And I didn't mean to
No,
throw
no,
any shade
not
about. Hey, listen, I was
not
born in the Bronx, so
not
I know
no
plenty.
insult. I mentioned stickball to people today. They don't even know what I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're doing double Dutch. Let me throw a rap.
Yes.
Double Dutch. That was our original GPP. Double
Yep.
Dutch GPP. Hopscotch is GPP. So, I think we just got to bring it back, right? Like, let's just get real. Like, maybe with our own athletes. I do some small group training here. Instead of us going through this boring, static, dynamic warm up, maybe we just throw a game of tag in. Look at even look at what Penn State has done. Everybody wants to do games now, right? They saw them playing the dodgeball on Big Ten Plus. Now everybody plays dodgeball.
Right.
It's not that dodgeball is revolutionary. It's that you're bringing an element of free play to adults, to high level athletes. And so, of course, they're going to absorb it and have fun with it, because they're going to be competitive, whatever you put them in. So I don't think there's some wrestling coaches, they think dodgeball is like they're splitting the atom here. They found some discovery, right? It's just some basic PE games from the 80s. They think they rediscovered the wheel, but I digress. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I have a lot of opinions on this.
Should we ask him about soccer? Because that was a big topic with Turley.
Oh boy. So what were some of the you mentioned your brother, you mentioned you touched on your mentors. What were some of the earliest influences and mentors you had going into your sports?
Yeah, I'd say I have to start with my high school coaches, Coach Nicholson, Coach Massey. They really two guys that really advocated for me. I mean, back then you could like pick up and drop a kid off, right? If you could do certain things and go that extra mile, where now everything has to be so business and official because of liability. So I don't come from that world, right? I had to adapt to that world. So those two guys, they were like second fathers to me. They were huge influences, really good people, good family men, basically the models you need in your life, right? Those are what make young men who they are. And unfortunately, those are dwindling. But hopefully with these types of things and these avenues, we can really have good impacts on the future gen. On top of that, I'd say my college coach, really a great guy, Coach Murray. He would pretty much do anything for his wrestlers up at Brockport. He helped a lot of guys get jobs in education, law enforcement, things like that. And I have to give him a shout out, because he's a very, what's the word? I think the people say polarizing.
Right.
They either people really like him or hate him, because he's very old school, whatever that means. So he's somebody that had a lot of influence on me. He just was one of those coaches. It's like just like a big loyalty thing, right? So like if you worked hard and sacrificed for the program, either you were like a national champ or a starter, or like a kid who just walked on the team, like he was going to help you with anything he wanted. And I'd say lastly, a name you guys are probably familiar with, Coach Bill Jacato. He was the head coach at Spencerport. His brother Tim is in the Hall of Fame at TCNJ. He was probably my utmost influence in terms of physical education and coaching, because of the professionalism he brought. He basically like ran the practices. So I brought 4 coaches up, 2 college, 2 high school. Really lucky to meet all of them and have them in my life, John.
So from those lessons you did learn from them, how do you apply them to today?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So a lot of the stuff that they did teach me and came up, right, it would be hard to kind of translate in today's world.
Right.
I think the biggest thing for me is like just the idea of using wrestling as a vehicle, right, to build champions on the mat and in life. So again, it didn't have to be wrestling; it could have been tennis. But the point is that I just look at this as a tool to help people, and there's no greater sport. Obviously, I'm biased, but that's going to build that than wrestling, because there's just it's individual, mano a mano. Like I played other sports, right? I enjoyed them, lacrosse, wrestling, but it doesn't have that same, what you learn about yourself and the trials and tribulations. Like you could, you could, and then just the eclectic mix of people on a team like wrestling, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. It's like football in that way, but it's different. Wrestling, just unless you've done it and you've been through it, doesn't matter if it's at Nassau Junior College or Rutgers, like it's still the same. It's still the same brotherhood and camaraderie, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Correct. So, getting a big topic we have here is recruiting. Can you talk a little bit about how NIL is playing a factor in that, and if what the advice to someone who was getting recruited out of high school to help them make the right decision with that whole process?
So that's a great question. So anybody who pretends like they know every answer is lying because it's so new.
Mm-hmm.
So there's people who pretend to be like NIL experts, and they're not, because it would be impossible to be, because it's ever changing.
Mm-hmm.
But so I just want to preface with that. It's important to note that there's people who are claiming they know every. It would be impossible, but recruiting is everything. I mean, from a coaching lens, right? Like a head coach's role is not to teach a backside single on how to beat funk. It's to recruit, and ultimately it's to fundraise. You look at like a Rob Cole, Coach Goodale, their role is to fundraise and allocate funds to that program, right? And it's a hierarchy. So I think it's important. A lot of sports fans don't know that the job requires recruiting and fundraising. That's the head coach's role. So if they're a listener, it doesn't matter if it's football, basketball, that's what their role is. I think that the athletes now should take advantage of junior college. New Jersey has some great JUCOs, great opportunities, unless if you're not a top tier recruit, where you're not going to get that eligibility counting against you now. I'm sure you guys saw that.
Mm-hmm.
1 year, it doesn't count anymore. So you can have a developmental year. Say you're like an all region kid, right? All conference kid. So I talk to that population because that's probably 97, 98% of the wrestlers, right? And then even the guys who are at that level, you know, with the advent of the RTCs and the gray shirting, I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can really extend it. I think there's a lot of advantages to that from a maturation standpoint. I don't think that, if you're a kid who's going to graduate on that early 17 side, it doesn't hurt for a stay back year
Mm-hmm.
from a social emotional standpoint, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot more options. I think there is a D1 or bust mentality. I think with this 30-man roster cap coming in, you're going to see a trickle down effect, so to speak, with the D2s, the NAIAs, even D3. There's some great ones in your state alone, and especially here, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
in New York. So I do think kids don't need. I think that you should shoot for the stars. I think you need to have high standards. I think everyone's goals should be very high, and obviously, the higher you set them, the higher you're going to land. But it's also important to be realistic. That would be when we talk about goal setting, it's SMART goals: specific, measurable, accurate, realistic, timely. So
Mm-hmm.
we also need to be realistic, what the kid can accomplish, and being truthful, right? So, yeah, I mean, talking recruiting, I mean, you're seeing it now. Like you win a D3 national title, you saw the kids are transferring to Iowa. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
different schools. Like, there's of course been plenty of kids like Fry, who was the 125 national champ D3. He was from a D1 school. So either direction you go when we're talking about wrestling in particular, I mean, you always have options. And if anything, now there's even perform well, worry about that stuff after. Say you have
Correct. Yeah.
aspirations to wrestle D1. Okay, go get a D3 national title first.
Yeah.
They'll talk to you. You don't have to go chase that. They'll ask you. Those opportunities. So I guess not putting the cart before the horse. I'm big on development and things like that. That makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
guys. I'm big on the development. I think that we need to like lean into development.
Well, I think kind of to build a little bit off of that too, you go win that D3 national title with the transfer portal and conversations we've had with other coaches as well, is that they're always looking for guys that have that experience. And you have programs that want to develop high school talent, and then there are others that want to bring in the experience because their jobs are on the line and they've got records they have to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. With the portal, I mean that's like a whole new that opens up a whole new lens. Um, but yeah, most programs aren't going to be recruiting a kid out of high school, and unless that makes sense for your here's the thing though, every university is different. So it's like, are you an urban university? Or are you a suburban university? Do you offer in-state tuition? Or are you a private college? Are you a liberal arts school? What are your demographics? So it's really, I've coached at Brockport, right? Was my alma mater. And I've also coached at Hunter, two different schools. We're talking Western New York. And then we're talking middle of Manhattan,
Right.
2 blocks from I mean, these are two different they're two different conversations when you're talking to a high school kid and parents. So, yeah, just to hopefully clarify for the listeners, it really just depends on the coach, where they're at, the resources, what type of university it is. Is it D3? Is it NAIA? It's a very hard thing to generalize it to, just to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
So if we rewind the clock slightly to your going through that process, how was it for you? What schools did you had mentioned Brockport, but how was it like competing there, and then comparing it to then today, the differences?
So different. I would say that in terms of looking at schools, yeah, I went to a lot of the New England schools. One of the best recruiters, and obviously they won a national title. Coach Morris at JWU, he was one of those guys who was very adamant with the follow-up. And obviously, it explains a lot to their success was because even when he was recruiting, the follow-up, right? And when you are recruiting, it's about a constant communication. So there's some coaches that think they're gonna call a kid and it's gonna be like a one call close. You're building a relationship and nurturing that lead, so to speak, over time, and so you need to build that relationship. Even now, like I have a lot of respect and appreciation because of that relationship, regardless if I didn't go there in my time. One of my best friends, Joe, who was my teammate, ended up wrestling there. But yeah, I think it was really different. It was word of mouth then.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like when I talk to like you talk to like a pizza owner or somebody, and it's like, oh, how do you guys get customers? And Johnny's like, it's word of mouth. We've been here for 100 years. I don't need to go on Instagram. Forget about it. So even I just knew Brockport was a tough school because everyone said it was tough.
Right.
Use this example. Like I didn't know, there was no social media highlight. It was almost like, I kind of miss it. It was like the power of an urban legend, right? It was just kind of like stories. And I think that's why people, I'm going to go off, gentlemen, but you think about Coach Gable and the era of the Hawkeyes and what Dan brought, the intimidation factor as in senior, and the fact that he was training and he was preparing for the Russians. And I talked to some older people and some other coaches. There was that urban lore. It was that urban legend where now, I don't know, maybe we can get your guys' insights. Like everything's so transparent. There's good in it because we could share our stories.
Right.
Right. And it's powerful if somebody's going through a tragedy or an adversity. But also we kind of don't have that lore anymore, right? We kind of see everything's we see out behind the curtain, so to speak.
Yeah, it's almost like everyone's like kind of like putting on a little bit of a front sometimes.
That too.
Well,
and I think,
yeah. Well, because social media, no one sees the negative.
Yeah, and the people who succeed on social media are the ones who tell I think that people who do well are like being real, so to speak. They're not hiding like I went through this is why I do it. I mean, that's why I coach. To be honest, I think the best coaches are people who still have a chip on the shoulder. Maybe they got injured, right? I had mindset challenges. I had physical injuries, right? If I would have trained smarter, overuse, overtraining. So me empathizing with the athlete, understanding what it's like to come short, can make me relate to them in a way when you're dealing with the 98%. Also, I had like the blessing to be around some great coaches and have opportunities to be around some great athletes. Like in the summers, I used to work at the Cornell wrestling camps when those guys were there, Coach Hahn, Coach Cole. So I kind of have had a mix around different levels of athletes from youth to Division I. So it's good to see kind of the different challenges. But what I notice really in wrestling is the technique ain't far off. When we're watching D3 Nationals and D1, it's between the ears.
Right.
So obviously John can attest to it better, but it's definitely everyone knows how to shelf a single leg.
Yeah. It's
Not
just
to
it's
nerd
just how
out
you
on
finish.
this,
Yeah, it's just
but
how you finish it, how you want to finish it, kind of thing.
Right.
Kind of getting into that, mindset talk a little bit. When did you start realizing that mindset was just as critical as the physical part of the preparation?
I feel like I always had known that and felt like it was important. Um, there was this book that was written called Wrestling Tough, by Mike Chapman. Was probably like, it was a human kinetics book, and it was one of the first like pieces of resources I kind of found myself like looking at, and this was a while ago, right? So, and then like some other stuff by Professor Gould. He was actually a Brockport alumni back in the 70s. He's done a lot of work up in Michigan. So starting to do that, then like no one really knows about it. There's not really a lot of information about it 15 years ago. And then I remember my senior year in college, Dr. Stephen Gonzalez, I think he might have went to Penn State, or he had some good background. He starts offering this sports psychology class. And for my major, I had to take like child psych, abnormal psych, behavior psych, but that really doesn't have much to do with sports psych.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there wasn't a lot of information on it. So, you're trying to watch Kurt Angle run up the hill with a broken neck, and you're trying to like figure out what Coach Gable did. And like, I'm not old by any means, but this was not something that was talked about. It was not something that was valued. And it was definitely ain't something your coaches talk to you about. So,
Yeah, it was a very taboo topic, and it was, I mean, I'm older than both of you, but it
You're
was
not that old, Harry.
well. In this regard, I think I do come from a bit of an older school mindset, because it was like, you didn't show emotions. Crying was never allowed, and you had to just suck it up, and that was you mentioned that old school mentality. That's what it was. There were no excuses. No one wanted to hear anything, and I was a baseball player, so you could be 3 for 4, but if that one time you made an out was at a crucial point in the game, no one cares that you went 3 for 3 prior to that, and that
yeah.
was different mentality.
So you're Yanks all the way, or
No, I'm a Mets fan.
I was gonna say LGM, Little Chase. I was
Yeah,
trying to see where we were at.
I,
Brooklyn.
I'm a
Well,
Mets fan.
I'm a Yankees fan.
yay!
Not
Me
not
too.
not too happy with the last five games, but we're okay.
2-1 Yanks.
Some of my best memories, though, honestly, like, so going back, it's funny. We're going to. My grandfather was a big Yankees fan, and he probably wanted me to be a baseball player, but like obviously I ended up being a wrestler, and he would come to the matches and support me. And it's just funny though, because generation, old school Italian, Bronx, baseball, Yankees.
Mhm.
So
Let's
yeah,
call
it was funny because my dad was old school Italian Brooklyn, and he was a Dodgers fan. And when they moved to California with the Giants, he always I never saw the Brooklyn Dodgers play, but I feel like I've watched them play because I heard too many stories from him. But it was
Really
sacrilegious. You could not root for the Yankees if you were a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. It was just not going to happen. So when the Mets rolled around in '62, he had a baseball team again.
A lot of people don't know about the Brooklyn Dodgers. That's good
Yeah.
stuff right there. It's yet letting the kids know.
Yeah,
Harry,
well, Flatbush, Ebbets Field. It's not too far from where the Barclays Center is these days right now. So that's where they played, in that area.
No, that's great stuff. I wanted to bring up the baseball because I think John asked me about the mindset. So I think as wrestlers, so we're so insular, and we should look for inspiration outside of our sport. For example, like a good baseball player, they bat 300. That means they fail more than they win,
Yeah,
right?
I've
So
used that example a lot.
Yeah.
I just, you're a baseball guy. You could speak to it better than, John and I. It might be speaking like another language, but just when I look at the sport of baseball and I see some of the ways that these guys do stay stoic and are composed, especially pitchers,
Right.
there's a lot to learn there. Obviously, we don't expect the kids to know this, but kind of as we move into the coaching roles, like we can kind of use these analogies, so to speak. Even like the great, like I put up a story on Instagram. It was Wayne Gretzky said, "Go where the puck is going,
Mm-hmm.
not where it's been." Right. So I think as wrestling, as a sport, obviously our background, like we need to be able to evolve. But just because we evolve doesn't mean we have to lose touch. This is what people don't get. You don't have to lose touch of like old school values and mindset and mentality. We're adapting and evolving. We could bring those things with us.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? I think people think like it's very binary, one way or the other. You could do both. Why don't we use new school? Why don't we use technology? Why don't we use data? Why don't we assess heart rate, etc.? We can get into the weeds with it, watch film and stuff, but also incorporate those those values along the way. Why can't we do both?
Well, I agree with you. And, you know, training and working with athletes every day, I think there's no escaping the fact that analytics have become, you have to have some form of analytics in the training you're doing. But I also describe, and John will appreciate this and he'll chuckle, I describe my training as being boring, and not boring in a negative way, but I'm not searching for a viral reel. If you look at the stuff I put on Instagram with the athletes I'm training, nothing's going to get 10,000 views. I mean, that's not the whole point of it. It's to show people that whether you're 7 or 17, you can train very similarly, doing what I call boring, but are the basic fundamental movements that you need to know how to do as an athlete. But then I can tie it into modern analytics and to give them real-time feedback and show them how this is working today, or it may not be working, and what do we have to work on.
Absolutely. That's that also the baseball player in you. That's your
Yes.
baseball background
Mm-hmm.
showing too, coach.
Well, when you
Abs-
mentioned too, also baseball is one of the only sports where you can fail 70% of the time and go to the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
except Pete Rose.
Well, yeah, well, that might be changing. That might be changing. So we'll
I
see.
saw, that's like funny. That's the algorithm on the clips. I'm on
Right.
YouTube and that I saw a video on that, and I'm like, all right.
Him and Shoeless Joe, he has a shot now. So those two guys have a chance.
I just, yeah, it's going back to the 70% losses thing. Like, it's got to be win or learn on the mat, and that's another thing. I think John asked me about the mindset. Like, it's such this binary outcome based thinking, and it always was. And I know for myself in wrestling, like, especially when I got to college, it didn't get easier in the sense that, like, it was just focused like all American national champ. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And you leave that not satisfied because you're like, oh, wow, I did way better in high school. Like, and you go to nationals, or you go and you don't get what you want. Obviously you could relate. It's just, you lose sight of all the things you learned, and then it takes years to kind of retrain yourself. I always say that athletes and people have to retrain themselves after university. They have to because you're attaching your identity to an outcome or to the sport, and you have to kind of learn to be a person again, so to speak. So
Right.
we want to be careful with that. Obviously you've probably been training guys generationally now. They did the 4 years of college. They did the job in the city. Now you've seen people, maybe they're starting to get people's kids or nephews and whatnot coming into the doors.
Well, I'm watching kids now that I started training when they were in the 6th and 7th grade, and now they're coming back to me. Look, I had one of my girls come back to me yesterday. She just finished her sophomore year at Providence. She's a softball player, and you're like, yeah, I remember when you couldn't do half the stuff we're doing today, and just watching that maturation and growth, and we've used the word evolution, evolving to where they find themselves today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. That's incredible.
That's why we coach. That's what coaches are.
Yeah, totally. This is great stuff, though. I just think that we got to get into that win or learn. I think we got to focus on the process. Big book, Chop Wood, Carry Water.
Yep.
It's cliche, but it's a great one. I think every athlete should read it.
I gave you that book.
You did.
I gave you that book.
Yep.
Oh, so that's like a book that's had a big impact. And another book I read, a mentor had told me about, is Inside Out Coaching. If you ever heard that one.
No, I'm going to write that one down.
Yeah,
Harry loves books.
Yeah.
Harry loves books.
They love books still. The kids these days, they want to be on their Instagram reels.
It keeps my brain sharp.
Too much. I call that brain time. Mm-hmm. So with athletes I work with, I'll do like substitutes, right? Like dead time, basically like doom scrolling. You have to replace with brain time, whether that's journaling or reading a book. That's brain time, I call it.
Mm-hmm.
So making those substitutions, I think that's the biggest thing harming our athletes now, guys, is that they don't need another single leg. They don't need to choke up on the bat. They don't need another X's and O power I. That's how old I am for football. It's 20. No one does power I formations anymore. They need something else. They need they need less, and they need a routine.
Right.
They need accountability, and they need life skills.
Hmm. So how can athletes stay focused on the internal goals and growth rather than getting lost in the external, hype and rewards? Kind of like what you were talking about, like you go in through university and then you kind of get lost in it a little bit and have to come back. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yes. So I think that one, you have to have the self-awareness. You should do a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, that sort of thing. You have to know yourself before you can master, it's that old quote, before you can master others, you must master yourself. You want to be a great leader in the wrestling room, on the baseball field. It starts with just leading by example,
Hmm.
not telling people what to do. We've put athletes in, obviously you've been there, in these types of leadership positions, and without leadership training, it goes off the rails.
Hmm.
If you give the wrong person a title, it's just like adults. But they need this, they need some training that, hey buddy, like, you don't need to be loud, just be present,
Right.
Hmm.
listen, lead by example, that sort of thing. um yeah, I think it's, so first, self-knowledge, appreciation of the little things, being, having an attitude of gratitude, right, being appreciative, focusing on things that actually matter, having perspective, right, knowing, it's a lot of work, 'cause, a lot of knowing your values, knowing your core values, knowing what you stand for, whether that's faith or whatnot. You need to know who you are and what you stand for, and that's going to help you in your decision making process, right? For example, like when I'm working with an athlete, does this move you closer to your goal? You told me on May 1st your outcome goal was that you wanted to be a county champion at 152 pounds in 2026. Is that moving you towards it or away from it? Would a county champion think like that? Does a state champion um skip Saturday workout? No, it doesn't. Okay, so now we know how to navigate. So they need to have good, like, ways to navigate, and that always falls back on your values, your principles, your religion, who you are, what that is, your identity. So you have to have an identity outside of wrestling, and that's why we have to encourage multi-sport. We have to encourage kids to still be kids, but that doesn't mean that we need to be soft or, pump the brakes. It just means that we need to keep perspective,
Hmm.
and I think that's what, some of the best programs have been able to do with the highest level wrestlers, in our case, and is keeping perspective, right? It's not the end of the world. And when that, say, freshman gets on campus at either whatever level college, they need to have they should spend about 80% of their time, the old 80/20 rule, 80% of their time focusing on the process and performance goals, and 20% of the time focused on their outcome goal, whether that's like, be a Big Ten champ, uh, win
Hmm.
the EIWAs, whatever conference they're in, that's outcome goal. I think that they should spend 80 to 90% of their time process performance goals. I will hit 3 lifts this week. I will get 8 hours of sleep. I will get out in 80% of my matches. I will get a riding point in 75% of my matches, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm. What are your thoughts on visualization? Because for me, and I can give you a little example. My in high school, I always had a picture and right in front of my bedroom of the New Jersey State finals met in Boardwalk Hall, and like every morning I woke up and like that was my end goal. But I still had those little goals throughout the day, so I always had that visualization of I want to get to that moment. I want to get to there. Just kind of your thoughts behind that.
Yeah, visualization is a powerful tool. Again, it's just a tool, just like a thick bar. I'll
Hmm.
talk to, or a certain agility rope is a tool. It's a tool. Visualization is a tool in our mental toolbox.
Hmm.
I think you need to see something before you believe it. When I used to run, you could relate to this. I would imagine every space or every interval was like me accomplishing that goal.
Hmm.
I would also pair that with physical body language. So in wrestling, the referee raises our one hand. I would instruct the athlete to accompany their mental visualization, incorporating their senses, their sight, taste, smell, hearing, with a physical, tangible anchor, such as hand getting raised, right? Such as,
Hmm.
maybe when you snap on the headgear, you lock in. That's your focus cue.
Hmm.
So we want to pair our thoughts and our mindset with actual physical cues, so it's not just fluff for the athlete or the coaches. So we want to explain to them like this is an actual tool. I mean, visualization, John, is a great one because there's data, there's research going back to the 60s, 70s on visualization working, and there's some really unique stuff out there. You guys can look at about injury rehab and injury prevention. So athletes who used visualization accompanying rehab have had far greater results. Whether that's a placebo or not, the data still is there that shows that an athlete overcoming an injury should utilize visualization on top of their physical training. So yeah, I think visualization is great. I think that it should be done more often. I think people think it's just like you close your eyes and just think about it. Like, yes, that's like step zero. That's like the prerequisite. That's like step zero.
Yep.
The baseball guys are very familiar with, I know, visualization, right? Because there's a lot of external factors: the wind, the environment, with the terrain. We don't even have to deal with that on the mat.
No,
Mat's
yeah.
tough. It's a different type of thing.
Well, and I'll bring it back to the baseball. I know, even though it was a Hollywood movie, but the Kevin Costner movie of For the Love of the Game, he has that moment where he keeps telling himself clear the mechanism, where he's able to drown out the roar of the crowd, and all he sees is the catcher's glove and throwing to that spot. So that was his way of visualizing and being mentally prepared to pitch, and even though in a Hollywood scene, a major league game. But there was that one part of that movie stood out to me, and I've never forgotten it. So that's how much of an impact it had.
Movies are a great source of inspiration and motivation. I think that an athlete would be better off watching a movie than doing an extra workout before a tournament per se, like that, like watching an old school actual movie with a
Right.
a message and a positive theme.
Right.
But yeah, I like how you put the jersey, you put it up. Like, I mean, that you guys asked me earlier, like I would have the goal like on the light switch, like it's going back like 20 years ago, putting the goal on the light switch, like seeing it every day so I think another thing I do with athletes right now that's helped while we're on the topic is vision boards. So creating a vision board with quotes, with pictures of not only themselves competing, but say John Pozanansky, right? So just like your favorite athlete, or somebody like that, somebody who again, I always say you want two models: somebody who's like a peer, maybe for these high school kids they can put Bo Bassett or somebody like that, and then maybe somebody above that, like somebody at the senior level like Dake, or Strachey, or somebody who's wrestling at the next level. So maybe a peer, somebody at your level, and then somebody at way above you, So yeah, I keep going back to talking about modeling. Yes, we need models. You need models of success.
So, Coach, I do want to touch on this topic because I think it's very important. Burnout is very real, and we are seeing a lot of that with younger kids. And I mean, I have very strong opinions on that, and that could be a whole nother topic for another day. But what warning signs should parents be looking out for? Should coaches be looking out for in an athlete if they're going through a burnout phase?
Burnout phase. Yeah, I mean, burnout is definitely real. I think a lot of burnout is under recovered and unmotivated. So it's the coaches, the parents, and the athlete's responsibility. What I mean by that is maybe your kid wouldn't be burnt out if he wasn't on TikTok all night playing a video game and eating. What do the kids love? Taki. So you have to understand.
I couldn't relate to that. I'm sorry.
That's like what the garbage.
Yeah.
What are they? The Bang Energies and whatnot.
Yeah,
So
monsters.
of course you're going to be burnt out when you're going from, you're going across the street to Giovanni's Deli and you're getting crap and you're eating junk and you're staying up all night, but you're going to practice for 2 hours and then you're going to club. But your habits outside of that 2-hour window, that 4-hour window, are not aligning with the habits of what you wrote down to me. You told me this was your goal. You told me this is what you wanted to accomplish. So I believe coaches, in terms of burnout, yes, I think a lot of the time it's due to under recovery. How do you know your child is actually burnt out, meaning like needs to seek professional help?
Right.
Simple. Couple things: loss of sleep, lack of sleep, meaning they're actually trying to go to sleep, right? So also I would be aware if my child was not sleeping before a tournament, a match, or a baseball game. That means there's a high level of performance anxiety. There's a high level of nerves there, right? I would also just say, maybe just simple stuff. Maybe they like playing with the dog. Maybe they like doing simple things. So they're the warning signs. They're losing a lack of interest in basic things that he or she used to do prior. So these are serious. This is when it's like everything nowadays. There's like real burnout and fake burnout.
Right.
Because like a lot of these medical things and terms have kind of bled into normal vernacular. And so now we don't know the definition of things. For example, anxiety, depression, horrible things that can really affect somebody and are debilitating, but are used so loosely and synonymously and misrepresented. And that's unfortunate because it's not representative of the population in the sense of people who are actually dealing with it. So I think burnouts are the same thing. It's thrown around a lot, but I have to sit there and think, what's your athlete's report card look like? And I'm not talking about their GPA. I'm talking about their nutrition, talking about their recovery, talking about their mindset. Did they have C's and D's? Is that what's equating to their burnout?
Right.
So I'm a big believer in that. I don't know how you feel, Harry, about this topic.
I agree as well. And I think also too, it's the overuse of these kids in these sports. And, there are some kids I train and they're wonderful kids, but they play 3 sports, what feels like 11 and a half months out of the year. There's no time off. They might be playing one sport on a Friday, one sport on a Saturday, another one on a Sunday. And these kids aren't old. They could be like, they're 11, 12, 13. They're exhausted. They're showing injuries that I don't think a 12-year-old should be showing certain levels of injury. And they're not just being allowed to be kids. And then when we get to the training side, I wish more parents would let their kids do training and not play as much, because that's how you develop your body and believe it or not, give it a chance to recover. You recover from training and getting away from what you do, which then leads to overuse. And again, I'm very spirited on this topic, but I can go on for quite a while, but I don't want to burn the rest of our time here today.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just we'll move on, but the over specialization. Yeah, you're talking about under 12. Okay, I was thinking a little bit older. Yeah, I mean, the number one reason a kid joins a sport, there's actual research on this from Michigan Youth Sport Institute, is the number one thing they picked is the 3-letter word. It starts with an F and ends with an N. Fun.
Right.
F-U-N, fun. So when we're dealing with that age group, I mean, it's not normal. Let's call it what it is, that a 4th grader needs Tommy John surgery.
Right.
Speaking of baseball. That's not a normal behavior. We didn't see that 25 years ago, as you can attest to.
Correct.
This is not, that's something that you saw in a college ball player, perhaps, a pitcher who's got mileage on the arm. And you're absolutely right. It is because of a lack of free play, sedentary lifestyles, processed minimal nutrition. There's a couple variables that are at play there, but I think kids need more time to be kids. I think that they should be involved with somebody like yourself in a organized, and it doesn't always need to be organized in that sense, but strength and conditioning, following age appropriate development. Because we put the cart before the horse in America. We go all in. You got to be the 6U state champ down in Atlantic City. Kids got to be the state champ in middle school. But like, who's to say he's going to be a state champ in high school, right? Or we have NIWA here. That's the thing in New York. But yeah, in Canada, they have the LTAD model, like the long-term athletic development, I think is a great approach when it comes to building GPP and physical qualities, right? Just building that base, building GPP, certain SPP qualities, depending on the sport. But we go all in, scrambling drills for the 3rd grader. He's rotating the head like he's Yanni on the ankle, and we're getting nuts. The kid can't even shoot. He can't even go neo penetration step. And we got him on his head doing a 360 like he's a b-boy breakdance and doing scrambles. John knows what I'm talking about. It's crazy. Cart before the horse. Kid can't even do a push-up. How is he going to learn how to do a stand-up? He can't do a push-up.
Well, I think that goes back to the viral reel. Everyone wants to be the next sensation, and just be you. Just be the first version of you. And I think we'd have a lot better success with our kids.
as somebody myself, I mean, it starts young, and really it's sad, but places like yourself are doing the real, physical education.
Right.
Underground Strength Gym, Coach Evanish is doing physical education.
Right.
That's physical education. This was what was supposed to be done in school. And about this, when I was in school, we did gymnastics.
Right.
On
Well,
the
I had gym every day. I mean, that's not even I don't even know if that happens anymore.
Let me not. We can get on this topic for a while. Like, yeah, there's a lot of things, and I think kids just need to be kids. But what I've been able to help a lot of the athletes with is focusing. Say we have 24 hours, they spend 8 sleeping and another 2 at practice. What are you doing in the other 14?
Right.
I'm helping them fill those gaps in the other 14, because that's really what's going to make a difference, right? And he knows, if you think one-to-one, an hour a week with NCAA qualifier, state champ, a county champ from around here is going to make your kid get to a podium, you're crazy. You're crazy. Listen, that's important. They need to individualize. They need to develop their skill set, but that's not going to get them to jump levels. Their self-belief, their confidence, their ability to deal with pressure, set goals, strength and conditioning, speed, etc. It's a holistic approach. It's not just one, like, and I think that's where we lose it too. Like, oh, but he's doing baseball privates with Johnny Mo. He was an all league guy.
Right.
He was down in the Diamondback. Yes, you still do that. But if you think that's going to be the only thing that's going to get that kid there, it's just not it. And
no,
I
don't
want to hear that, but I'd rather
agree.
be myself and be honest with you fellas.
Oh yeah.
No,
it takes...
I agree with that, because
Yeah.
I got to be careful how I say this. Just because someone trains with me 2 or 3 days, 2 or 3 hours out of the week, which is basically 1 hour a day, is not going to make them a starter or an all-star somewhere else. It has to be a piece of the process that they're doing. There has to be other things involved in that.
It's like a puzzle, taking all the pieces to the puzzle.
Yep.
So coming towards the end here. Oh, do you want to touch on it? Go ahead. You good?
No, the puzzle is great. Yeah, it kind of
fits in. Yeah. So coming to the end here, where can people learn more about you and reach out to you about your mindset coaching?
Yeah. So Instagram, obviously, best way to reach me at coach_Coco_. My email, coachcocowrestling@gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook. Everything on any social platform is Coach Coco Wrestling, right? I mean, I'm pretty open. I don't believe in this, like, here's the thing for the listener, like, it's the age of information. There are no secrets. The secret is there is no secrets. Right. What I provide is accountability and results. So I will tell you everything. You can go on my Instagram. You can literally build your own mindset program. You can watch the YouTube. That you can learn. You can learn from guys, so many greats. You can learn, but everybody needs a coach, and I have my own coach. So I think there's power in coaching, power in mentorship, and that if anybody ever has a question or a challenge, I'm going to ask it. I'm going to answer it openly. There is no paywall. I am open and transparent. Whether you decide to walk through that door or not is totally up to you and the athlete. And that's where, developing that relationship comes in. So I'm a big believer in that, though. I'm an open book with this sort of thing.
Well, I very much enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, yeah.
This was a very good one, very informative. And, Coach, we want to thank you again for taking the time out of your day to join us. We really appreciated your insights and opinions on this topic. And I think it's a very important topic that people need. I think sometimes they're too afraid to discuss it, and we have to have these open conversations about it, and, get the feedback from people. I'd like to hear what people have to say, whether they agree with it or not. I'd like to know, because that's the only way we're going to be able to help the kids, because I know that's what I do. That's my whole purpose for doing what I do. It's to help the kids and to hopefully lead them on a path that is going to ultimately get them to a successful ending.
Absolutely. And that's the number one thing. I think it's easy to lose sight as coaches, egos, accolades come into play. The number one thing has got to be the number one thing, and that's to help the athletes.
Right.
And whether you're delivering that under a barbell, on a one-to-one mat session, doing mindset exercises, visualization, journaling, it's all the same thing. You're just trying to get that athlete onto their track, onto their journey of success. And I think we can't lose sight of that, though, because of the bureaucracies and inefficiencies, depending on if you're at the university level or in a private set. It's very easy to get caught up in they didn't pay this month, and
Right.
this guy's across town, and this other coach. Can you believe these guys in our conference? Yes, it's frustrating. Trust me, I deal with it every day. But we can't, like you said, Coach. The kids are number one.
Absolutely. They have to be. They most in my
You can't do this.
No, you can't.
Don't do it.
They have to be number one for sure.
Finding all pieces of the puzzle.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're liking this puzzle thing
I like
today.
the puzzle thing.
Oh, baby.
Well, Coach, we thank you again for being on Destination Talk, and that is a wrap on episode 24 of Destination Talk with Paz and Harry. Until we see you again.